Okay. What's up, guys? It is Tyler McKinney, and I just had to take a breath because it has just been a whirlwind of information coming from the XFL, and that's right, we're going to talk about it. Hey, if it's your first time here, glad to have you. If you're a return viewer, thanks for coming back. Thanks for watching more videos. And if you haven't yet, you know what I'm going to say. Please subscribe. Love to have you as part of the community. And all you guys that are subscribed, you know I love you. You know I love you coming back and leaving all those comments. Man, it has been a whirlwind. And jokingly, I said that at the beginning, but it truly has. The whole marketing of the XFL has officially started. Pretty much everything was kicked off with the rules. We talked about those in another video, and I'll put a link to my thoughts about all the rule changes and all of that down in the description. I'll even give you a little card up there, so you can check that out if you want to, and then come back and watch this one. Or if you want to wait and watch this one, go to the description and watch that one. You're more than welcome to. But it has just been a whirlwind of information. Since that date, listen, they've been doing a media blitz, and I think that it's a great thing, and I think that it's awesome. We've been getting content from the XFL everywhere. So let's go ahead and let's kind of lay out how we're going to do this video, because there's a lot of content we got to get to, and I want to just give it to you guys. And so you guys can kind of know which way that we're going and where we're going with all of the information here. What we're going to do is we're going to start out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of give my thoughts and kind of review the first week of training camp, just overview stuff. We're not going to get into breakdown team basics and things like that. We'll get into that later on in the video. The second thing that we're going to do is that we're going to kind of cover the overall stories. We're not necessarily going to cover the team stories, but we're going to give kind of an overview of kind of a few of the stories that are kind of the big stories throughout the first week of training camp, and then we're going to hit into the teams and what I thought of the teams, and that is going to get us into our very first, that's right, our very first team power rankings. We're actually going to start to sit down and we're actually going to start to kind of rank these teams based upon the buzz and the word that's coming out of all of the different training camps. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start. This is going to be our very first preseason XFL team power rankings. I'm excited about it. I hope you're excited about it. All right, let's go ahead and let's get into the actual first week of training camp breakdown. Overall, I think they did a fantastic job. We finally are getting the media blitz that everybody's been talking about, and it is, I mean, you got Oliver Luck showing up on all of these primetime radio shows, primetime TV shows on ESPN, on Fox, talking with the bigwigs, the guys that are in the primetime shows and getting on these shows and really talking about the XFL rules. And the fact of the matter is I thought that he's done a fantastic job with explaining them. And the thing is that you can definitely tell that this league has put the time and the energy into things. It isn't that they're trying to change things up just because we want to be cool, we want to be different, we're going to set ourselves apart because we're different. No, what they said was listen, we like football. Football's awesome. But we know that there's some things that we can fix. And so what they did, and you can watch his interviews and all that stuff that he did, and you can tell that they went through, they researched what was working and what wasn't working from the NFL and from the college level, and they kind of took, I love the fact, because, listen, the XFL is like BASF, if you remember the commercials. They don't make the things you love, they make the things you love better. And that's really what I think that the XFL is trying to do here. They're trying to take what we love as football, whether it be college football or pro football, and really trying to find what works best in those, implement that, and then the areas where they lack, really try to accentuate and make them better. And that's what I think that they did in the rules. And you can watch what I think of the rules with that. But they're really showing that they really put the time and the energy and the research into that. And I think that that's great. And it really showed in his interviews because he had all the answers that he needed when it came to when they had questions about things, when they thought about things. And the neat thing was the response. It wasn't like this hokey response that sometimes people give about things, they're actually getting legitimized. And, they're talking about like, oh yeah, this is a good thing. And, and some people didn't like some things. And there were some people that, there's still skeptics out there with it. And don't get me wrong. I totally understand. We haven't even played a down of football. So I totally get that. But I think that was really good with the media blitz. And really, it kind of all culminated with, if you've been watching football the past day or so, you can start to see the XFL on Fox commercials. And with those commercials, we had Joel Klatt. When you put Joel Klatt, who's one of the biggest analysts, and guys that really breaks down the game on Fox, and you get him on a commercial promoting your product, that is a big deal. He is one of their premier guys, and to get him to do that really legitimizes what you're doing and really brings credence to your league. And so I thought that was great, showing that halftime. Listen, all those people watching those games, they're tuned into the XFL now. Not maybe necessarily are they going to watch it? No, but the XFL has now been put on a lot more people's radar than necessarily what it was before. And so these people football's winding down. Really, this was the last big week of football. We're going to get 2 games next week, and then from there, it's just going to be 1 game. So, the people that have been watching football constantly, they're going to have a hole in their heart, and the XFL is going to be there to fill it. I'm joking around here, but that's the truth, and that's what they're trying to do, and I think they did a really good job with that. Now, XFL, I've got to apologize. Because if you guys have been watching my videos, you know that I said that they'll probably bring things closer into the vest and kind of shut things down for training camp. They have not. If you've been on social media, if you've been following the XFL teams, they have just been putting the same content that they put out there with mini camps. They have not dialed anything back, which is just surprising to me. I would think that they would like go into hiding or something like that, but they haven't. Listen, they're still giving us the same access and the same information that we got like during minicamp stuff and that, and I'm just shocked by it. I love it. We got to see stuff from the joint practices. That was pretty cool. We got to see they even started posting videos about how these new rules will work, and they showed examples of the punt, and I think I might even saw one on the kickoff, as well, and just kind of these new ways that they're doing things, which is really cool. They're really putting a lot of content out there for us guys that are really intrigued into the league and wanting to keep up with the league. I really think that it's really neat, and I really, really like that. So overall, I think that it's fantastic. Now, granted, there's been a few hiccups this week, and I know that. So I'm going to leave those for the team, though, when we break down the teams, because that's really where they fall on the specific teams. And I believe it or not, I know I've been a glass half full guy the whole time, and I know I'm going to give you guys. I have some doubts in some places. Not anything that's like a lingering thing or anything that I think that I'm worried about the league. But there are some things that, kind of worried me this week coming out. And so we're going to look at that when we get to the teams, because they're more like team-specific type of things. But overall, I think that they've been doing a fantastic job. I mean, they really couldn't ask for more, really a better first week of training camp than what they had. They've been doing a fantastic job with that. So, grading the first week, listen, with everything that went on, what they did, and the way that they handled it, I'm giving them an A-. I think if it weren't for those few hiccups, which we'll talk about here soon, I think I would have given them a solid A. I was really pleased with it, enjoyed all the content. It was a lot of content, and a lot really hard to cover, but I really liked it. All right, so let's get to our last really kind of overall general article or news bit for the overall XFL. And really what we're starting to hear is that the XFL has been in talks with somebody, we don't know who, about an XFL football game. Now, I've done a video before about this, and this is kind of legitimizing my thoughts and what I thought about in that video. And the fact of the matter is that, and I think that this is good. It looks like that they've been in talks with a XFL's been in talks with, it seems to be some larger video game maker company, whatever that be. They speculated maybe that might be Sony, it might be Microsoft, it might be 2K Sports, which I think it might be 2K Sports just because the WWE has such a really good relationship with them, and they've been working with each other. There's a really good partnership that's already established there, to where that might be the place where they end up. Which I'm thinking they might go that route, especially if you guys if you guys have been playing video games, especially sports video games, for a long time, and football, that for a lot of us, 2K5 was the pinnacle of football games. I mean, still to this day. Now, granted, you had All Pro Football 08, and that was a really good game. Which it was kind of like they took a whole bunch of like legends, and you created your own teams and stuff, but. It really harkens back to like the pinnacle was 2K5, and to bring that back, that engine with new graphics and some new stuff with RPOs and with this new high flying offenses and just kind of tweaking it to make it more modern would be amazing. They've really been in talks, and they've been in a lot of discussion, but they really haven't inked a deal out yet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the uncertainty with the league. And it looks like that they're looking like they're probably going to do something. Some reports I've seen have been like fall of 2020. Some reports I've seen have been fall of 2021 and be ready for the 2022 season. So it would be like the third season of the XFL. And I would imagine that would probably be it. Now, if the XFL takes off and is just gangbusters the first season here, I could see them green lighting that a whole lot quicker, especially if it's somebody like 2K that already has kind of possibly still has that game built that they can throw it together real quick, and still has that that code and that and be able to bring that over. And I don't know how quick of a turnaround they could do that with it. I mean, you don't want to just throw out a game. You want to put out a good product. There's nothing worse than throwing out a game and it being terrible, because then nobody wants your game anymore, whether it be XFL or that publisher. So, I'm looking more probably, you're looking along the lines of probably somewhere around a 2021 release, maybe summer, fall, probably more like a fall, maybe have it ready for the holiday season, release it somewhere around November. I think that might be the sweet spot. And then you can go ahead and as things line up, as the things change, and as they do things, they can, put out their roster updates and things of that nature through downloads and that, like you have normally with other games as well. So I think it's a good thing. It shows signs that that this league is very viable. Now, whether or not the product on the field happens, I mean, that's really the question mark right now. It has nothing to do with business here. Right now, we're seeing that they're doing a very good business model. People are liking the business model that they're putting together. Companies are intrigued. As you can see, more and more and more. I know, especially since I've been in this space, I've noticed that as things have been progressing, that like I was one of the first people talking about XFL on YouTube, and now everybody and their brother is starting to talk about XFL, and especially the larger YouTubers and the larger channels are starting to pick up with the XFL, as opposed to just us guys that have been around here for a long time and that. So I think people are really liking that, but the thing is to seeing the quality of football out on the field. However, I think from a lot of the things that we've seen from training camp, from mini camp, that we're going to get good quality football out on the field as well. So I'm not as concerned about it, but it's still a question mark because we haven't seen a down of real football yet. So those are kind of the thoughts on kind of the overall news. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn things over and start talking about the individual teams and how their first week of training camp went. All right, so how we're going to do this is we're going to take and we're going to break it down by the teams that practice together on Saturday. So let's go ahead and let's start with Houston and Tampa Bay. Now, starting off with Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay is a mixed bag to me. I really don't know what they are, and I don't think Trestman knows what they are either. Trestman is one of those guys that, he can kind of morph into whatever his team needs to be. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes that's not. And I think he's really trying to figure out what type of a roster he has and what he can do with his guys. And that really brings me to kind of the talk midway through camp was, let me make sure I get his name right, Ranel Hall, and he was a wide receiver, and they kind of switched him to D-back, and he seemed to really fit in well there. Now, I don't know if that's where he's going to end up, if he's going to be a starter there or whatever, but that was kind of the jazz coming out of camp. And it really feels like we just don't know what they have. And actually, when it looked like Saturday came around, Trestman was not happy with what his team did. Especially early on. Now, they said, oh, well, we kind of broke it up and, we got with our players and, they did better. From all intents and purposes, they might have picked it up the second half, but they really got outclassed, by Houston from what I've seen so far. And really, Houston really took it to them to where, I think his team is not where they need to be and they're not where he wants them to be. And he's still trying to figure that out. And with having less than 30 days left to go, I think that he's kind of starting to panic a little bit. I mean, obviously, this is my thoughts, putting things inside his head. I have absolutely no clue what he's thinking, but that just seems to be right now where I'm seeing. It just seems that Houston was a lot faster and a lot more prepared and ready to go for what they did on Saturday. It'll be interesting. You know me, I am an Aaron Murray kind of skeptic. And if you notice things coming out of Tampa Bay as well, you're starting to see a lot of Quentin Flowers. And so now whether, he or Cornelius will take over, starting job or whatever. But if you notice, Flowers was drafted running back who could play quarterback. And now he's been really moved. And you see him a lot in the quarterback realm in that with it, to where I wonder if he might really see some significant playing time at quarterback, especially with this forward pass thing and that, to where they might really get him in this kind of quarterback / slot receiver / running back type of a realm. I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter and a lot of stuff on social media, stuff that they've been posting a lot with Quentin Flowers in it. Again, that's just me, and I know that I've already got this bent against Aaron Murray. Aaron Murray, I have nothing against you. I just want to see, I want to see more out of you. Now, I know that, the AAF, the team you were on, and that it was a dumpster fire, and it's not your fault with that. So hopefully we see a lot of good things out of you. But those are just kind of my general thoughts so far on Tampa Bay. Now let's go ahead and move to Houston. And Houston, for me, is kind of this interesting team with it. I was kind of, when they came out of minicamp and we saw kind of the stuff with them, that they were talking about how they have a really kind of complex defense, and the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff was talking about that and how the guys were picking it up. So I thought they might have had a hard time on defense. And I don't think they did with Tampa Bay. I think they really showed that, they're doing well, and I think that the offense and the defense on their team is really, really coming together, and I think that Houston is really going to be a force to reckon with. Now, this is going to be kind of a theme going on here, and it's talking about the quarterbacks. And listen, the quarterback position is just that position that it's what everybody wants to talk about. And two, there's a lot of stuff happening in the quarterback position. And I think a lot is happening in Houston. I think that so Walker was kind of, he was afforded the team and assigned the team as the tier 1 quarterback. And then they drafted Connor Cook fairly high, if you ask me. They seem to be really high on Connor Cook, and he's kind of come in. Now, granted, they brought in Marcus McDade, and I think that and hopefully, Marcus, I pronounced your name right, but I think that he's just kind of going to be a guy that's just kind of a third guy, especially if somebody goes down. I mean, we've already seen that with Landry Jones, and we'll talk about that coming up here. But looking at that, Connor Cook, so it started out that, Walker was doing good, and then Connor Cook was looking good as well. And then all of a sudden now we're halfway through, and they're both taking starting snaps, and I think that they both have been taking starting snaps. And now you're starting to see, as things are coming out, especially if you watched that if that bit that the XFL on Fox did on the halftime show of the game this evening, the Packers game, Packers Seattle game. That Connor Cook was in that promo. And if you've been keeping up with Twitter, he kind of, did this kind of pump up thing and leading the guys kind of at the end of the day, at the end of the practice, and they posted that on Twitter. Connor Cook has been kind of out in front. They've been showing him a lot. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I will tell you that you're not going to put a guy out there that you don't think, one, is going to be on the team, and two, is going to be a good representative of the team and one of your best guys. Me personally, I'm just not going to do that. And so it's really interesting to me with that, to where Connor Cook might actually take over and steal the number one QB job. I know that there's some guys out there that don't like that, and you're like, Tyler, seriously, that's not going to happen. From what I'm seeing, Connor Cook is getting a lot of love out of Houston, and for good reason. He's got all the talent in the world, and he's definitely a very good leader. And I think that this is his opportunity, and you might just see him day one starter. I know you guys are skeptics out there, but I'm just telling you that's what I'm feeling, and so I'm curious to see that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's move on to DC and LA. And let's start out with LA. And LA is just right now, the defense is ahead of the offense. That's just kind of where it's at. And it seems to be that their defense is just very vocal, very physical. It seems like that's exactly what Winston Moss wants. And that's just exactly what I see from him. That he wants this type of team, and that's the type of team that he's building, is a very physical team. And it looks like they had a very physical practice when it came to them in DC. Now, the big news, and like I said, we're going to be talking about quarterback stuff, is Josh Johnson is here, and it is Josh Johnson's team. He pretty much has stepped in since the day he was there, day one, and he has taken over. Luis Perez has kind of... I think he's still doing all right, doing well, but it just seems to be, from everything that I'm hearing, there's no comparison between the two. This is Josh Johnson's team, and I think because of that has just now really made LA a really a force out west. And now we'll see if that translates. It seems to be, like I said, that the defense is a little ahead of the offense right now. They're very, very physical team, but if they can bring that physicality there with an arm, with a guy like Josh Johnson and the abilities that he has on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's going to be a really interesting season, and I think that you're going to end up with an LA team that's going to win some games this year. Now, let's go and let's turn our attention over to DC, because DC has been a team that, again, they're physical too. Like these guys were kind of some juggernauts hitting at one another on Saturday, which is a really cool thing and a good thing. So as we're seeing it looks like Cardale Jones is going to be a star in this league. From all intents and purposes of everything I've seen, kind of like the Connor Cook, he's starting to be a guy that they're kind of marketing around, and Oliver Luck has mentioned him a lot, that, like, listen, this is his opportunity to really show that he is a star, and he's looking forward to seeing Cardale really step up and shine in that role. And so this is his team, and they're really putting like pieces around him, and that the running backs are running hard. Things are going pretty well. Now, they said that, this is another team where the defense is ahead of the offense, especially kind of the defensive backs. And the defensive backfield has really shined so far. So that's what they're saying. Anyways, the reports from different sources, different places and things. And as I'm looking at it, they did a really decent job on Saturday against LA, and kind of squelching them. And one of the things that too is, it'll be an interesting guy. I think that DeAndre Tompkins, he was making just kind of some fools out of some guys on Saturday. I mean, a lot of stuff coming from him just got like unguardable. I mean, if you watch some of the Twitter videos and some of the stuff, like, I mean, he's just some sick moves and stuff to where if you got Cardell throwing the ball deep to him and you got some hard-nosed running, like I said, DC is going to be a force. And, you know, if they can give Cardale some time in that back there, you know, you might just see with all of those teams coming out of the East, you know, at the end of the day, you'll see DC, you know, might just take it and run with it, and so I'm excited to see it. Now, granted, you guys know that I'm, you know, I'm a huge Buckeye, and so having Cardale there is kind of a cool thing for me. And that with it, but it doesn't seem to be any type of a like a quarterback, any type of a competition thing going on there. It looks like that this is Cardale's team, and that the defense is really strong right now, and it looks like DeAndre Tompkins he's going to be a guy we're going to be talking about when it comes to fantasy football, and a guy that's going to be a star in this league. So it's pretty cool, pretty exciting to see what's going on with these two teams. All right, so let's go and let's look at Dallas and Seattle. And let's start in Dallas here, because Dallas, really, this is the one that we know kind of the big story. And so pretty much Landry Jones, who's been kind of the poster boy, the first signed player of the XFL, he is out now, and he is out with a knee injury. So right now that left really Dallas, with one QB, and that was Philip Nelson. And so what happened then is that actually the league assigned Eric Dungy. They signed Eric Dungy out of Syracuse, who was he was a guy who went undrafted and then got signed, and he's kind of been on practice squads for different NFL teams. And he didn't sign a futures contract, so they picked him up. And I think he's a huge pickup. And if you kind of watch the progression throughout, now granted, he's only been there for a couple days, and but Bob Stoops has said that he's picking things up really fast, and he likes where both of them are at. And as you talk and you hear things, you kind of hear things that like Hal Mummy, you know, he's like, well, you know, he's starting when it talked about Philip Nelson. You know, he's starting to get things better. When he took things over from, you know, Landry, the first couple days, or the first day or whatever, you know, things were a little, you know, things he was pushing things too much and that with it. But he settled down. You know, he only had a couple bad throws, out of 50 the other day, and he's progressing. But I think that Eric Dungy, if Jones cannot come back, this is going to be Dungy's team. That's just the way I feel. One, I think the league assigning him says something, as opposed to Nelson, who was a guy who was drafted to the team. Granted, that doesn't mean anything. Like I said with Connor Cook, you know, that's another one there. But that's interesting. I think that Eric is slowly here, and probably by the end of next week, you will see that he is he will be kind of the starting guy, and he's going to take over the starting reps. Nothing against Philip Nelson. I think he did a great job in the AAF, and he did get hurt. I just think that Eric Dungy is a better fit in this offense, and I think he's kind of the gunslinger that they want, and he's a guy that's used to this type of an offense. That's kind of the you know, he ran a very high-powered offense in college and did it very well and effectively. And so I think that he's definitely going to be the guy to kind of like take that over and really do that. And so that's kind of been the story there in Dallas, is just kind of picking up the pieces from Landry, you know, from where Landry Jones left off. And as soon as they can get him back, I think that the Renegades are going to be back on track. And they might not even miss a beat without him. So, it'd be really interesting to see how things progress and just how long that Landry Jones will be out. If he's going to miss 2 games, if he's not going to miss any games, 1 game maybe, and how they're going to adjust with that and who will be the starter in that place. But right now it's looking like it's going to be Dungy with that. Let's go ahead and let's move Seattle. Seattle's just kind of like, it's kind of what you expected. When we talked about their roster and talked about who they are and what they are, they brought a lot of guys. So we know that a lot of the guys that are on the team, especially the offensive skill players, and a lot of that are guys who came with Mike Riley from San Antonio. They picked up a lot of those guys, and Jim Zorn's kind of brought those guys in. And Jim Zorn is kind of like like a quarterback whisperer, and they were allocated silvers. Well, they picked up B.J. Daniels, and B.J. Daniels has been making some noise in this offense. Now, it has been saying that the offense has been clicking and things are coming around pretty well, but as you can tell, especially with the stuff on Saturday and things, that those guys are in a quarterback competition. So we're dealing with two teams here in Dallas and Seattle that have quarterback competitions, and like I said, talking about the quarterbacks is going to be a, kind of a theme. And so we have a lot of quarterback competitions in the league already. So we've already talked about 3 teams that have legit quarterback competitions going in to, going start of training camp. And we'll see how those progress. But we've got another one here with Silvers and B.J. Daniels. And B.J. Daniels has been getting a lot of buzz because he's a very athletic guy and, very good. Both him and Silvers are both top-notch guys, but it's been interesting to see that. Now, the stud and the guy that's been standing out has been Trey Williams, and listen, we know since he's been drafted that this guy's special, and he's making it known on the team, which I think is huge. If they can really figure out a way to utilize him, I think that Seattle's really, really going to do really well because they, especially in the offense that they're in. They really need the playmakers to step up and make plays. And if they can do that in Mike Riley's offense, I think that it's going to be huge. And that's why I think that B.J. Daniels is really getting a big shot at this quarterback competition because he is one of those guys that can make big plays. And especially in this league with that whole forward pass thing, I know we've talked about it before, but I think that they might try some neat things with that. So that's kind of my thoughts on those two teams. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do our final 2 teams. And those 2 teams are New York and St. Louis. And let's start out with New York. So New York is really coming in this, and Matt McGloin is really taking this over. This has become his team. And they've kind of, I don't know, they're like the New Age Giants, if you ask me. It's kind of like Eli Manning. That was Eli Manning's team. They had a really good defense, and they just pounded the ball. And that seems to be, to me, what they're planning on doing, what they're looking at doing. It looks like they've got a couple guys that are stepping up on the outside at wide receiver, and they're really just kind of playing some hard-nosed football. And I think they're going to be kind of a sneaky good team, especially in an East that I don't know is shaping up to be super, super strong. So I think that they're going to be able to take it to some teams. And so they were going ahead and they were playing against they were up against St. Louis, and it seems to be that they were taking it to St. Louis. Now, St. Louis seemed to kind of bounce back a little bit towards the end of the practice, but it looked like they were hitting them pretty good, both on the offensive side of things and that they were kind of giving, St. Louis kind of some real struggles and some real trouble in there with that. So I just kind of think that, like, New York has been kind of flying under the radar. This is, you've seen Matt McGloin out there and out in front of things, but outside of him, you haven't seen really a whole lot of things, but that, they've been tough in practice, that practice has been tough. And I think that you're going to find that they're going to be a tough team, and they're going to be a sneaky team because not a lot of people are going to be talking about them. And I think with them picking up Matt McGloin, a guy who has NFL experience and things like that, I think that he'll be able to exploit some things in the middle of games that maybe some of the other teams, might not, with some of the inexperience of these players and that, and really kind of bring them and win some of these close games for them. So I'm kind of curious to see how they end up with that, because like I said, they're just a sneaky, quiet team. And I think that that's a good thing. All right, so let's finish up with St. Louis, and that's where all the buzz is coming out right now, because we know that Doug Meacham, he's left the team. He's no longer on the team. And so that's promoting Chuck Long and Reggie Davis. And let's look at Chuck Long here. And, people are already... just kind of, people are starting to hit the panic button. And I can understand that. Like, losing him, listen, we are less than 30 days away. You've lost your offensive coordinator. Okay, I understand that. Now, let's look at this. Right now, we know that they're a hot mess. They didn't look good on Saturday. They haven't been playing well. They didn't have a good first day of camp, and that's before Doug Meacham left. I think that, though, I think that you can put the faith in Chuck Long for 2 reasons. let's go ahead though first, and let's look at like Atlanta Legends, because that's what everybody seems to be comparing them to when Brad Childress and Michael Vick left the team. And then they promoted guys up. Those guys had never had any of those positions before. It was the first time that any of them had an offensive coordinator position or a head coaching position. So that's that first there. Now, when we're looking at it, now granted, this is Jonathan Hayes' first time as a head coach and not necessarily a coordinator or a position coach. So it's definitely different for him. And he even made that statement after Saturday that it was an interesting experience for him. So who knows, maybe they've gotten their first taste of, some, competition outside of their team and see how that goes. They haven't been great, though, and I can tell you that Jonathan Hayes has definitely been a little frustrated, I think, with things and that they're not developing. This might change with Chuck Long, though. Chuck Long is a guy, now granted, Doug Meacham is a guy that he has been stout, and he's very good offensive coordinator, got a lot of experience. So does Chuck Long, though. Chuck Long ran a lot of those Bob Stoops offenses, to a runner-up Heisman Trophy winner and, runner-up to the Heisman Trophy and a Heisman Trophy winner. He's coached that, and he's coached the offense. He's coached the offense being the offensive coordinator. So this is not a new position for him, and he's held a high, coaching Oklahoma is no slouch job, and it's not that's a very sought after job, and that is a very prestigious job for him to have the offensive coordinator there. So this is not his first go around. This is not new to him. He knows this. Now, granted, this is where I get kind of a little bit more respect for him, and I think that they'll be all right, is the statements and the way that he looks at things. Jonathan Hayes came to him first. He was his first choice as the offensive coordinator, and he's like, listen, man, I've got my thing that I do and that, and I just, really his thing, it was very humble about it. I've been out of football, I just feel like too long, and really he had only been out of football for a few years. I mean, it wasn't like that long. He's like, I need to take a step back. So he hired Doug Meacham, and then he went back and he's like, listen, okay, if you're not going to be the offensive coordinator, then you're the running back coach. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. So Chuck Long, I love the humility in him, and I like to see things like that in coaches, and that it shows me that there's more to this guy than that, and he understands, and he has a good radar on things, and that he's he sees it well. So I'm really I feel better about the way that his approach coming into all of this stuff, and they needed him to step up, and so I mean in the end, Jonathan Hayes does get his first choice. Now, granted, it's a little further down the road to where I think they've kind of got their things in place. They're going to have to probably take it from here, and he's got a young quarterback that he's got to mold into a quarterback. But the nice thing about it is, though, they have a decent defense, and I think that they're going to have a good defense. It's not whether or not that offense is going to catch up. And the sad thing is that it might be week 3 or week 4 before we actually see the offense going, and by that time they might be so far behind that they might not be able to catch up. So those are just kind of my thoughts about each one of those teams. So let's go ahead and let's finish this thing out, because we're going to do our first power rankings. And what are we doing? We're just basing it based upon the information that we got throughout the whole of camp, and I'm just kind of taking it based upon this first week of camp. Now, teams can move and they can change and they can shake, but a lot of this is just based upon how I feel right now and just kind of the security of that I feel in the team. It has, and what we've seen on the practice field. Now, we know that practice field sometimes doesn't translate to the actual field. So once we actually get to play, things might completely change, and they're gonna shift from week to week. But this is my initial one, so bear with me on this one. Now, first and foremost, let's start off with the last team. Right now, St. Louis is just they're in disarray. Things are not clicking the way that they want there, and so I'm definitely putting them at number 8. Number 7, I think, is Tressman with his team in Tampa Bay. Again, he's trying to figure that team out, hasn't yet, and so I've got them number 7. Now, number 6 is probably going to be controversial for some of you guys, but I just feel like from the things that I've heard that Philip Nelson isn't ready to take over this team, and neither is Eric Dungy. Now, Dungy might, like I said, by the end of next week, we might see that it's his team, and so that, but with Landry Jones going down, that really took them from really one of the top 2 one or two teams in the league down for me. So I've got them at 6 right now. Again, they'll probably move up as we get sure on the quarterback position, but right now it's just too murky for me to really move them up. Number 5, I've got LA. They're going to be scrappy. Josh Johnson really has them there at number 5, and they could move up higher than that. I've got my sneaky number 4 team with New York. They just seem to be doing kind of everything okay all around. No real big buzz there. And number 3 seems Seattle. Seattle seems to be doing things fairly good. However, they do have that quarterback competition that does kind of have me not concerned, just kind of have me kind of thinking and holding them back from really moving them any higher. I've got Houston in 2nd as well because it seems to be they have this quarterback competition, but it might be actually Connor Cook's team come next week. So we'll see how that goes. That's why I have them in the 2nd spot instead of the 1st spot because I like everything that I've seen so far with them, and they seem explosive, exciting in that so far. But again, this is practice, but since they have this quarterback thing, I'm kind of keeping them out of that 1st place. And in 1st place by default is just the DC Defenders. A lot of it has to do with it seems to be Cardell's team. Offense seems to be doing okay. They did really well on their Saturday practice, and their defense is really bringing it, and I really like the way that they're bringing it. So putting that all together, they would be my top ranked team. So let's go ahead and let's go over that real quick. We've got at number 8 St. Louis, number 7 Tampa Bay, number 6 Dallas, number 5 LA, number 4 New York, number 3 Seattle, number 2 Houston, and number 1 DC. And that is our first official preseason rankings. Those are our power rankings. So again, guys, those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you think? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear down in the comments. You guys give me your power rankings. All right, I know that everyone's busy here. So I know that you're busy and I know that I'm busy. So let's get on out of here. You have a good night.